Back in 1994, Chrysler introduced a new compact sedan, the Neon, as a successor to their previous entry-level models, the Dodge Shadow and Plymouth Sundance. Using the same model name for both the Dodge and Plymouth brands in North America, and the Chrysler brand everywhere else, the Neon's range went from stripped-down econobox to full-blown race car, lasting 10 years and selling over 2 million cars in the US alone. This is the story of the Dodge, Plymouth, and Chrysler Neon. This is my old car.
Cab forward, gnarly Dodge Neon Coupe. Say hello to Neon with $1,000 cash savings at your friendly Dodge dealer.
Thanks for the many suggestions to review the Neon, another little car that is slowly disappearing from our roads. If you're a fan of little Mopars like the Neon, you may also like my earlier episode on the Dodge Omni and Plymouth Horizon. I also plan to eventually do an episode on the Shadow and Sundance. Also check out my channel's community page, where I provide a preview and clues for upcoming episodes. Like most any other car, the idea for the Neon originated from an earlier concept car, and although it is not uncommon for concept cars to have a few features that never make it to production, the concept Neon took that idea to the extreme, with 4 sliding doors, a trunk that slides towards you, and a handy way to dispose of your trash.
Because the onboard trash compactor scrunches it all up for you.
With the Dodge Shadow and Plymouth Sundance nearing the end of their run in the early 90s, their replacement would be a return to even smaller cars, more like what the Shadow and Sundance replaced, the Dodge Omni and Plymouth Horizon. Unlike all of those models, Chrysler decided against coming up with different names for the Dodge and Plymouth versions of their new compact car, instead deciding on the name Neon for both, and the only difference in the cars was the badge on the hood. This wasn't the first time Chrysler used the same name across Dodge and Plymouth, like they did with the Colt that they shared with Mitsubishi. However, by the mid-90s, the Dodge and Plymouth brands had firmly established a specific look for their front grills, with the Dodge Crosshair grille and the Plymouth Egg Crate grille. By putting the name Neon on both brands, Chrysler really couldn't use either of those grille designs, but the shape of the Neon was such that it didn't really have much of a front grille anyway, with most of the air intake coming from below the bumper. This also allowed the Neon to be marketed as a Chrysler outside of US and Canada, although Canadian models switched to selling the Neon as a Chrysler by 1999. Built on Chrysler's new PL platform, the Neon, complete with its goofy yet adorable round headlamps,
Say hello to Plymouth Neon.
competed with domestic rivals such as the Ford Escort, Chevy Cavalier, and the Saturn S Series, as well as Japanese rivals such as the Toyota Corolla, Honda Civic, and Nissan Sentra. And with the Neon's low production cost and corresponding lower price, there was definitely some concern among its rivals, especially the Japanese, due to the yen's decreasing value against the US dollar back then. Despite the Neon being Chrysler's cheapest car, it offered a relatively decent-sized engine, a 2-liter single overhead cam 4-cylinder that produced 132 horsepower. While 132 horses may not sound like a big number today, it packed more horses than any of its competitors, the closest being the Ford Escort ZX2 at 130 horsepower. There was also a double overhead cam version which made 150 horsepower. More on that later. Unfortunately, if you bought the Neon outside of North America, you most likely bought it with a 1.8-liter engine, although there was an available CS trim that bumped it up to the North American base 2-liter. But despite a bigger engine than its rivals, the Neon kept its price down with features that were common on cheap cars back then, such as the base model's lack of air conditioning and dull gray plastic bumpers. And of course, a manual transmission was standard.
I'm this up, okay? I'm grinding it.
However, Neons had other cost-cutting features, such as rear drum brakes and manual crank windows in the rear, even in higher-end models that had power windows in the front. Speaking of the rear windows, another cost cutter was the unusual shape of the rear door that eliminated the typical additional fixed window next to the window that rolled down. The end result was a window that could barely even drop halfway, which is probably why they didn't bother offering a power window. Both the Dodge and Plymouth Neon offered some wild color options, although they eventually toned them down in later years. They also had lots of trim levels with varying levels of equipment, and with names that didn't always make it clear which was better than the other. For example, Highline, Sport, and in later years, the EX. The Plymouth had trims not available on the Dodge, one called the Espresso, and a later one called the Style. But both Dodge and Plymouth also offered a trim called the ACR. The letters ACR were initially just one of Chrysler's internal ordering codes, but later the acronym became known as American Club Racer, and was initially only available to members of the Sports Car Club of America, or SCCA. However, soon after, the ACR was offered as an option to any buyer, complete with a 150 horsepower double overhead cam engine, 4-wheel disc brakes, alloy wheels, and lots of racing-specific performance upgrades, including the removal of the speed limiter. And to save weight, ABS was removed, and the AC and radio could be deleted. The ACR didn't come with any special badging to make it stand out, but you could spot one if you looked at the front and saw fog lamp openings with no fog lamps inside. In 1995, for the 1996 model year, the Neon line was expanded to include a two-door model, which of course had fixed windows in the rear. 1996 was also the Neon's best sales year, selling over 245,000 in the US alone. However, I suspect sales wouldn't have been so high if everybody knew how well the Neon fared in crash testing.
All right, I'm gonna gun this car as fast as it goes directly into that wall.
Especially the front crash test, where the IIHS gave it its worst rating of poor. By 1998, another high-performance model was introduced, the RT, but only on the Dodge, since such an option wouldn't make sense under the value-oriented brand of Plymouth. Like the ACR model, the RT also offered the higher output 2-liter engine, but unlike the ACR, which was clearly intended for the racetrack, the RT was intended for the street, with more standard features and an upgraded sound system. And unlike the ACR, you could easily recognize the RT, thanks to its racing stripes that were clearly meant to resemble the Dodge Viper GTS. ACR owners tended to dislike the RT, claiming it wasn't a true race car. The stripes could be deleted for those who wanted the performance without shouting it to the world. Sadly, that probably didn't help lower their insurance rates. With sales dropping by several thousand units by 1999, a second-gen Neon arrived for the 2000 model year. With the previous gen's two-door coupe model not selling as well as the sedan, the coupe was dropped for the second gen. It still had the same cute bug-eyed look in the front, but it also had an all-new interior design, fully framed doors, and a new tail lamp and trunk design. The original single overhead cam 2-liter remained the base engine, whereas the upgraded 4-cylinder was referred to then as the Magnum engine, making 150 horsepower. Outside of North America, the Neon could also be had with a 1.6-liter engine that was built by Tritec Motors in Brazil, who also later offered the same engine in the BMW-built Mini. The RT model returned for the 2001 model year with a new Magnum engine, losing its Boy Racer stripes, but with improved performance upgrades. There was also a special Motorsports edition only available in 2001 to commemorate Dodge's return to NASCAR, complete with unique Goodyear tires with raised yellow lettering. In Canada, where the Neon had been selling as both Dodge and Plymouth, it switched to the more worldwide designation of Chrysler Neon in 1999, and by 2003 it changed names again to the Dodge SX 2.0, dropping the Neon name on the badging. Since the Neon was still being sold as both a Dodge and Plymouth when the second gen began, it still had a more generic front end that didn't really look like a Dodge or a Plymouth. But with the end of the Plymouth brand in 2001, this opened up the opportunity to give the Neon a new crosshair front grille that now clearly communicated it was a Dodge. The Neon ACR was dropped by 2002, and the RT by 2004, due to their replacement in 2003 with the Neon's highest performance model, the SRT4. The SRT moniker, which stood for Street and Racing Technology, first began in 1989 with the team that designed the Dodge Viper. The idea to make an SRT version of the Neon was first pitched in 1998 by Tom Gale, who was Chrysler's Executive VP of Product Development and Design. Although the concept was finalized by 2000, it took 3 prototypes to be built before the SRT4 was given the go-ahead for production. The SRT4's engine was a turbocharged version of Chrysler's 2.4-liter 4-cylinder, of which the non-turbo version was also in the PT Cruiser, although that car later also got the turbocharger for its higher-end models. Yes, the PT Cruiser, another good candidate for a future My Old Car episode.
That makes no sense.
This engine made 215 horsepower, and along with unique gearing and lots of performance upgrades, the Neon SRT4 became Chrysler's second fastest production car, with the Viper, of course, remaining number 1. The Neon even had Viper-inspired racing seats. The following year, the engine output jumped again to 230 horsepower, and it dropped the Neon from its name, simply being called the Dodge SRT4. Apparently, it was now too cool to have a name that would remind buyers of its econobox origins. Although the SRT4 was originally expected to only sell around 2,500 units per year, it sold far better than that, with over 25,000 sold between 2003 and 2005. However, the overall neon production by 2004 had dropped to less than half of its sales peak in 1996, prompting the end of neon production by 2005. The neon's official replacement was the Dodge Caliber, which was released in 2006 as a 2007 model. Although considering the Caliber's wagon-style design, it really only replaced the neon as Dodge's lowest price model. The Caliber also got the SRT4 treatment, but its overall sales never came close to the neon, and ended production by 2012.
What do you think?
That scares the out of me.
Although the neon name never returned in North America, the neon did come back in Mexico and the Middle East markets for the 2017 model year, but it was a rebadged Fiat Tipo as a product of the Fiat Chrysler merger a few years earlier. But the original neons are now averaging over 20 years old, and as such they are beginning to disappear from our roads, although the higher performance versions will likely be better preserved for more years to come. And you'll probably still see them in high school parking lots for many more years as well. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, click the like button and subscribe to my channel. If you once owned a car from the 80s to mid-2000s that you rarely see today and would like it featured in a future episode, leave a reply in the comments or contact me at the email shown here. See you next time.
That's it? Weird. Yeah, that was totally lame. That's what grenades do?